Hello, thanks for joining me for this workshop on RefWorks. For today's session, I'm going to be referencing a guide that we have on RefWorks that you can come back to and use, and just showing you how to use this tool to help manage your research. My name is Sarah Davidson Squibb. I'm one of the librarians at UC Merced, and so I'm going to be leading you through that process today. And I'm going to also start sharing my screen, and this is going to lead us initially just to the library's webpage, library.ucmerced.edu. And the guide that I'm going to be using today is located under our Research and Academics Research Guides. And I'm going to type in RefWorks and just click on this first link. So this is the guide that we have, one of our LibGuides here. And I'm not going to always come back to these pages, but in many ways, I'm going to follow a similar format for our session today, talking about creating an account, how you can get references for different types of sources into your account, some ways that RefWorks allows you to organize them, some editing, annotating, and then I think the really key piece that's superb about these tools is to help create citations and bibliographies and write while you cite. So that's where we're going to be headed in today's session. If you are on this guide, you can click on RefWorks to get into this tool. Honestly, I normally will just go to Google and I will search for RefWorks. And I'm looking for the URL that has ProQuest in the title. And so I'm going to click on the second option. The RefWorks version that we're using, the latest version, is heavily branded in blue. So this is the page that you're going to want to see. As a UC Merced student, faculty member, staff member, you have access to RefWorks because this is a tool that the library is subscribing to on behalf of our UC Merced community. When you get to this login page, you have a couple options for creating an account. You can just create an account sort of in this main area. Now, I already have an account, so I think that's why it's saying sign in here, but there is a create an account option. You can also create an account and have it connected to your single sign-on. And this is what my account is set up with right now. So when I come here and I'm getting to the login portion, I end up searching for Merced. It brings up our institution, and it's going to take me to our campus's single sign-on page. And when I log in, I'm also going to do my Duo authentication. So I'm just approving that now. And then this is going to bring me into RefWorks. So that's one option for you. If you use that option, the nice thing is you don't have to remember, another password or anything. However, there are reasons why you might just want to create your own account. You would still use your UC Merced email, but I would create a password that is different than what you are using for your single sign-on. Once you're in RefWorks and have created an account, you're going to see your name in the upper right. So this tells you that you are in the tool successfully. And when you first create an account, this portion of RefWorks, kind of the center area, is going to essentially be blank because you're starting with the framework of RefWorks, but you haven't actually put any references or citations into it. Mine has a lot of references in it. It looks kind of messy, but this is why I'm seeing a lot of information in RefWorks already. Just a few things about RefWorks and the navigation today. We're going to be using this left-hand menu pretty regularly. We are also going to be using a top navigation menu. I've already mentioned this center section, which is where we see our references. And then when we click on individual references, we're also going to see this right-hand panel come up. And we'll be doing more with that as we go along. So I'm going to start off now by saying, how do we actually bring stuff into RefWorks? This tool is not useful if it's not populated with resources that we're using. So I'm going to highlight a few ways in which you can do that. The way in which I most often bring references into RefWorks is through a search tool, so a database, for instance, that we have. So I'm going to show a couple examples of exports from databases. I'm going to start off with a database called CiteInfo. And to illustrate, I will click on the CiteInfo title. Once we get into this database, I'm just going to do a basic search so that we can actually bring up some citations to illustrate this. And CiteInfo is being a bit slow, so let me just try clicking this again to see if it'll load more quickly or if it's hung up for some reason. There we go. We're in CiteInfo, and I'm going to do a search for memory and music and click the search button. This is going to bring up a set of sources or citations for me. And this is a similar process that we're going to follow if we're in a lot of other databases. What I first have to do, I have to select the items that I'm interested in and would like to send to RefWorks. So for this, I'm just going to check mark 3 items. So I have those items. And then the next step I'm going to take is I'm going to look for a way to sort of export these or save these. The language can vary a little bit depending on what database you're in. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click the Cite button, although I think this is just going to give me initially citations I can copy and paste, but you'll notice at the bottom of this window, it has some other export options, and one of these is RefWorks. I'm going to click RefWorks, and this database is giving me another pop-up window, and I'm just going to go that yes port in there and scroll down and click continue. And I apparently need to allow pop-ups, so maybe it didn't like that pop-up. So let me try this once more. It's having me wait a moment, and actually this little piece here where it wants me to do yes port is something new that CiteInfo seems to have put in here. So let me just try this once more. I'm going to click Cite again, get the pop-up window. I'm going to click RefWorks. I will click continue on this pop-up window. And I will click continue again. This is really interesting because it doesn't normally do this. Okay, I am going to actually leave CiteInfo for now. That's really unusual, and maybe they just recently changed their functionality, because we should just be getting nicely plopped over into RefWorks from this. So let me leave this for now and try a couple other databases, and I'll come back and look at this later. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to come back over to our databases listing. I'm going to go into Science Direct. In Science Direct, I am going to search for something else. I'm going to try food industry and advertising. Again, I want to get a set of search results. I have to select some items that I'm interested in. Let me select 4 items out of this one. Again, I'm going to be looking for some sort of save or export, usually up near the top or at one of the sides. This has an export option. I'm going to click on that. And at this pop-up window, I do have an option to save to RefWorks. I'm going to click Save to RefWorks. And I'm going to say yes to export to the newest version of RefWorks. That's the one we're using. And at this window, I actually have a couple projects set up. So it is asking me which project, but honestly, I save most things just into this main project. You can also leave it at the default of not in folder, or you could select a folder that you have, and I'll be showing you how to create folders. I'm just going to leave it as not in folder and click import. So it says it's importing that data from those 4 citations into RefWorks. With RefWorks, we are totally just working in the cloud. We're not working in the client. So you may find that it can take a little bit of time to come in, sort of depending on the import, perhaps depending on your internet connection. Normally for me, it doesn't take that long, but it says it's saving documents. I'm going to see if I can speed this up at all. There we go. It says my import is complete, and it has saved 4 of those documents in the library. It says documents, but when I click OK, what I'm going to see is the citation information referring to documents. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Just came in a few seconds ago. And at the left, it says last imported. But I'm actually not getting the actual document coming in at this point. If you have an actual document that you've attached to your citation, it's going to show you an icon such as this one here, more in the middle. So I've brought in a few citations from Science Direct. Let me try another search tool. I'm going to go into Academic Search Complete just because PsycInfo was being quite strange today. So I'm just going to show you another example. And again, we're going to be following this process of doing a search. So I can bring up some citations. And for this one, I don't have the little check boxes, but I can say I'm interested in these 2 items. So I'm going to add them to a folder. I can go to my folder view in this database over at the right or at the top. So I'm going to go to the folder in this database. I just have to select these again. And again, I'm looking for like a save or an export. I'm going to try the export over on the far right. And when I click export in this long list, there is an option that says direct export to RefWorks. I can select that. And then for some reason, the save button is way over here on the left. I'll click save, and then this is going to start looking very familiar. Yes, I want to export it to RefWorks. That project, I'm going to leave them not in a folder and import them. So I should have 2 items this time. That was much faster for some reason, and these 2 are in my library. I click OK, and I now have a couple more citations in my last imported. So that's bringing in some items from a database using that export functionality. It's nice. Many of the databases allow you to bring in multiple citations. So I just did 4 and then 2, but you could be doing many, many more citations than that. A couple other things that you might be interested in. In Google Scholar, you can bring citations in one at a time. So if I wanted this citation, I would click the little quotation mark. It brings up this pop-up window and I can select RefWorks. And this is again going to bump me over to RefWorks, and I'm going to import that. Here's the one document and it's in my last imported folder. It would be nice if we could bring in more items, but that currently isn't possible with Google Scholar, and I have checked with RefWorks about that. So here is the item, and we'll do a little bit more checking about whether everything is there that we want to see there. So that's something like Google Scholar. Now, RefWorks also offers to us something called Save to RefWorks. It's basically a little bookmarklet that you can add to your browser. I have Save to RefWorks up here. It's kind of just below the URL for RefWorks. And you can add this to your own browser to potentially capture data off of web pages to bring into RefWorks. So a couple things about this. The bookmarklet information is found within RefWorks under Tools, so up here in this top navigation. Click Tools again, and it will have an option to save references on the web. And this graphic over here says Save to RefWorks, and there's an option to install and save to RefWorks. So this is basically something that you drag into your browser sometimes people have to make sure that this part of their browser is showing. So it's tools and RefWorks to get this. Once you have the Bookmarklet, you can experiment with capturing things off of the web with them. So I'm just going over to NPR's website, and I'm going to click on a title of a news article. And at this news article, I'm going to go up to this Bookmarklet and click Save to RefWorks. When I do so, over here in the far right, it was very quick. It will say searching for translators, and it will start trying to work to scrape some information off of this web page. So it's kind of bringing up this panel right now, but this panel is also looking pretty blank. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds to see what it does here. Again, I'm hoping or thinking that it should have pulled something up already, but here we go. So we have this panel. It has correctly identified this at least as a web page, although I might want to change this to a newspaper article. Let's leave it for web page just at the moment. You can say to save contents of this web page. I've had sort of varying experiences with this. I think with this news article, it would probably be just fine. I find it a little more dicey if I'm trying to save the PDF off of a page. And then it has a title. And this is kind of interesting because I feel like this title is not as close or not what this title is. So this is where sometimes you kind of have to like double check things, but I'm going to copy and paste that in. What I see more often is that usually the authors are missing. So this one, Will Stone, is not being listed. But the nice thing is I can just kind of look to the left, take the author's name and put it in there. I could also put in the website. So I could put National Public Radio, or I could put in the URL if that's what I needed. I can also put in the date. So you'll notice that it did not capture that either. So I do have to type that in. It did capture the URL. It did capture the date retrieved. So some of this I think depends on the website that is being scraped, but this is an option that you can use. And then I'm going to click Save to RefWorks, which I don't know if you can see that very well. I'm going to move my Zoom bar. Save to RefWorks, and again, very similar things. The project, do you want it in a folder? I'll click Import and View in RefWorks. And here's the item, and it says HTML article, so I can read that. So it did actually bring the text into here, although the formatting may look a little bit different. I'm going to go back to last imported. So again, you could try this on other things. So maybe there's a blog posting and you want to capture it into RefWorks. You could click again, Save to RefWorks. We're going to have the panel over here on the right. This one, again, loaded much more quickly. And again, I might have to change the title. I think sometimes this has a challenge knowing which pieces of this web page are actually the title. So I might want to take this and put it in here, etc. You can also add tags. This was not very good at discovering who the author was, and there may not even be an author for sure listed on this page, but actually there is. So these are things I would personally want to edit as I'm going along. I think it's a little bit more challenging having to come back and do all of this later. And if I wanted to, I could just take the website. They already have that URL. I might want to take part of the website, or I might want to put in here that it is called, I think, just blogging.com. And again, a published date. I didn't follow this super closely last time, but it's giving you in this really light text what that format should be like. So I'm going to put May 28th and 2020. And again, they're putting in a little bit of an abstract, which is not really an abstract, but you could put notes or get rid of that. And there's another note box, and Save to RefWorks. So I do use the RefWorks Bookmarklet. the Save to RefWorks pretty often if I am just looking at web pages. You can also try it for landing pages for journal articles, but as I mentioned earlier, I sometimes find that not as consistent in terms of being able to grab the citation information or grab the full text PDF off of those pages. And again, this is just sort of uploading for us. I might just navigate away from this in terms of time. Okay, so this one was saying we weren't able to save it. And actually that should have been pretty straightforward from what we put in there, but I'm not going to do that right now. But that can be sometimes a challenge depending on what you're trying to save. I'm going to close the sidebar, and I'm going to show one other way to bring items into RefWorks. So we've done things from the databases, the exports, we've done the Save to RefWorks Bookmarklet. And actually it's saying I have something new. Let me refresh this. Let me go to my last imported. So that was kind of interesting. It said it had a problem, but actually it looks like it brought it in. It also looks like I typed 2020 as 0202. I will change that later. So let's bring in items in one other way. I'm going to click the Add button in the upper left to add a reference. And I could create a new reference and type in things manually. You can do this over here. You can start with selecting, am I looking at a book section, such as a book chapter, and am I looking at a journal article? I usually try to totally avoid that. I don't like starting from scratch, but I can use that. But another option under this Add button is to upload a document. So sometimes I will upload documents, especially PDFs, into RefWorks. So I'm just going to go to a folder. And I'm going to try bringing in a PDF. And again, because this is all in the cloud, I selected that, and you'll notice that there's sort of a few seconds here where I almost can't tell if anything's happening. So it should be working on that, and now it just started grabbing it. And over here on the right, it says preparing document for reader. And this is currently just taking what I had named the PDF article, is calling it Forest Landscape Article. So I added it here. You also have the option of not just doing the plus button. You could literally drag a PDF into RefWorks and get it to do the same functionality. It would start to upload the PDF. I would recommend against dragging in a whole bunch of PDFs at once. If it gets hung up or stuck on any of the PDFs, it'll basically then just not keep uploading the other ones. So this one looks like it has successfully uploaded. As I mentioned earlier, when you have a PDF or an article associated with the citation, it will show you this icon. If I click on that, over on the right-hand side, I have the title. I could pop in to read this article because I have the PDF. And it looks like I have other data that was brought in. So this is all, again, being scraped basically off of the PDF. I did not have to type any of this in. I might, again, want to double check it. To look at this information, I can click on the little pencil icon up here in the upper right. So we're going to kind of transition now from bringing stuff into RefWorks to working a little bit more in the tool in terms of how do we edit things, how do we organize things. So we're in this journal article, and this information is now editable. So things like title, authors, this did bring in a true abstract. You could add tags to it that you could later search on if you wanted to. So if I, for instance, really wanted a tag for forest landscape, I could do that. And of course, you can always get rid of those. It also has this attachment, and this is what allowed us to get all that citation information. This is giving me a published date. I'm not seeing a volume issue. I might have to come back and add that in, but we have a URL, the journal name, et cetera, et cetera. So it's looking pretty good. I'm going to save that at the upper right since I did add a tag to it. So once I saved it, I'm actually going to click read because I'm a little bit curious as well if there was any issue and journal number on this one, and maybe there just isn't, which is fine. But I have the full text, and one thing that I can do in this tool is I can use some really lightweight annotation pieces. If you click on the A in the upper left, it says you can highlight selected text. So you can just sort of drag and pull that around, and it's highlighting for you. Depending on how the optical recognition has been done on the article, sometimes you'll get a little bit of funky highlighting. It might be kind of offset. I do find that most more recent articles tend to be pretty good in terms of the highlighting. If you click on the bubble, it's going to give you highlighting plus the opportunity to put in a comment. So I'm going to also just highlight this sentence. When I highlight it, it brings up this comment box. And let's not worry, I guess, about my spelling right now, which is incorrect, but there's my comment. My experience is if you print out PDFs that you've made annotations on in RefWorks, that it will not actually print out those annotations or highlights. So that's just something to be aware of. The other thing that I often mention to researchers is you may want to consider if you want your PDFs saved within RefWorks, or if you want to save your PDFs maybe in a box folder and then link out to them in some way. So that's another option. Sometimes people might not be in this tool forever. And even though it's pretty easy to export out your citation information, exporting out things like PDFs and those documents does not have sort of a straightforward way to do that. So that's just a little kernel to consider as you're thinking about your research and your workflows. I'm going to close my panel on that one. And I'm going to scroll down because I noticed that when we brought in a couple items from Academic Search Complete, this one I can tell right away has some incorrect capitalization in the citation. So this would be an example of something that I would definitely want to switch up. If I don't switch this up now, it's going to show up when I start to do my bibliography. So I want to keep this data as clean as possible. So I'm just going to save that. Another thing that's kind of neat in RefWorks, but maybe not always noticeable, is that you can, and maybe they've changed where this is. It's up at the top. It used to be at the bottom. You can change views of this page. So I'm defaulting right now to a normal view with 50 items max displaying at once. You can switch from a normal view to a table view. A table view may be more likely if someone's doing looking at a lot of things, maybe doing a systematic review, and you'll see that when I go to table view, it would allow me up to 1,000 items per page. There is also something called the full view, which is just going to give you even more information about each item. So this is, for instance, showing me the abstract because there was one. So you get maybe a better sense of what the item is about and where it came from. And they also have something called the citation view. And the citation view can be changed to the citation style that you are planning to work in. You'll notice that mine is right now listed as MLA 8th edition. I'm going to click on the citation view. And of course, I could change this to something else. I could search for a different citation style like IEEE. There are literally thousands of citation styles in here, but I think I'm just going to leave that as MLA 8th edition. I can check mark to highlight missing metadata. So what this is going to try to do for us is say, if you're using the citation style, this looks like a missing element or a missing piece out of your citation. So it's kind of clues that you might have to go back and clean up or add something to a specific citation. So I'm going to click Save. It's working a little bit, and you'll notice up here in the upper right, it says Citation View. And this one that we had originally looked at, it's alerting me that, hey, there's no volume number, there's no issue number, there's no pages. Now, this might be the case that there just aren't any, so it might not be an issue, but this is one way where you can kind of be alerted to what might be issues and what might need additional care and attention. Here's something else where they're saying, hey, the source database isn't here, it's missing a URL or a DOI, a digital object identifier. So those views can be kind of nice to play around with. You may have a preferred view depending on kind of what you're working with. I'm just going to go back to the normal view for now. Another thing that you can do in RefWorks is some additional organization of your materials. Over on the far left, there is a My Folders section. For you, this is basically just going to have My Folders and not in a folder when you're first starting. And you'll notice I have a lot of items not in a folder, and the ones that we've been using during this session, I've just been plopping into not in a folder. But you can create other folders. So Add Folder option is available to you. And I'm just going to do an ABC folder so we can kind of see this show up. So here it is. You have options for sorting your folders. So right now I have them sorted alphabetically. However, you can do a custom drag and drop, which is kind of nice. So maybe you're working on one project in particular. You might want to drag and drop something to the very top. So let me choose that. I could pull something up. Actually, that pulled something else up. Here we go. Let's just try that again. Okay, so I pulled confirmation bias up to the top. Or I could go back to something that's alphabetical. So you have these folder options. You can also, within a folder, create subfolders. So I'm going to go to this leisure reading and just click the 3 dots to the right of it. When you do that for these folders, you're going to have the option of adding subfolders. You also have the option of sharing folders with others under the 3 dots. And I'm going to click off of that for a moment because I do have some folders that are already shared. So for instance, this OER Lit Review has an icon with a couple people next to it. This indicates that I have it shared with 1 or more individuals. I click the 3 dots. In this case, I can go return to my sharing settings. And I could even create a public URL that I could send to other people. Currently, this folder is just shared with me and it's shared with one of my other colleagues. I could invite more people to share this folder with. And there are 3 levels of access that they can have. You can say, well, I only want the person to be able to read what's in here, or I want them to annotate, or I want them to be able to modify. So they could add things, they could delete things in my folder. So there's some level there of different access. You can also choose to unshare a folder, so it's not something that has to be indefinite. So that can be really nice if you're working with other individuals, if you're working on a group project, or if you're just wanting to share some of the things that you have found with others. So that folder structure, I think, can be really helpful. And I think under my sharing folder, this is something that another colleague has shared with me, and I can either accept it or not. Okay, so that's a little bit about some of that organization that you may want. That was a little bit about editing things that are already in here. So let's move on to some of the other reasons why we would really use a tool like RefWorks or some other sort of bibliographic reference manager. And that gets into citing and into bibliographies. In RefWorks, you have the option in this top menu to create a bibliography. And before I click on that, just because I have a lot in here, I'm going to select my graphing folder. So I'm kind of working with a limited number of references. And I'm going to click Create Bibliography and select Create Bibliography again in order to get a bibliography for those 20 items out of that folder. And it's telling me that I'm in this folder and how many items. I'm currently using MLA 8th edition. Because it's 8th edition of MLA, it knows that it's supposed to be called a works cited, and that brings it up to me at the top of the page. So I could copy all of this to my clipboard and I could paste this, for instance, into a Word document. This is another place where you may find out pretty quickly whether or not you would have to go back and clean up any of your references. Things may stand out to you. You can also change to a different citation style. I am going to try IEEE, so this is engineering style. I will mention though at this point, you'll notice that these are numbered, and this is part of the IEEE style. A lot of styles are what we call numbered styles. And normally what would happen in a paper though is that number 1 would refer to the first source that you referenced. Then when you get to your second source, it would be number 2. So it's your bibliography is not alphabetical. So these citations can be useful. However, I actually don't think this is the best way to use numbered styles. I think this functionality in here is a lot better for styles such as APA and MLA that are not numbered styles. So something like APA is called references. It is also ordered alphabetically by last name. But just wanted to mention that because it can be a nice, easy way to grab out a reference. Sometimes I've even done this for just a couple things. You know, I put something into RefWorks. I want to grab a citation out for it. I might just even select a couple items and go create bibliography and copy and paste those out into a presentation or something else. I'm going to go back and return to create bibliography, but instead of create bibliography, I'm going to go to quick cite. And quick cite, again, is going to let you choose the citation style that you want. Again, I think this works well for things that are not numbered styles. So again, something like APA, MLA. I think this also works better for like shorter things that you're working on versus long papers or dissertations. But I'm going to leave it at APA 7th. I'm going to continue. This should only, oh, I see what it's doing. This looks like it's bringing in everything that's in my last imported folder. So what I could say is, okay, maybe I want to cite this item in my paper, and I was using APA style. So what it brings up in this box is my parenthetical citation. This is what I would put in while I'm writing. So I might want to copy and paste that into my paper. So I could have this window open. I could also have a Word document open and kind of be using the online RefWorks tool. So I could do that one. Then I could say, well, I want to copy this citation. Now, because I didn't clear that one out, this is putting them together. And that can happen when you're writing. You know, you might be referring to 2 different articles, but similar concepts. So you could copy that and paste it into a paper, etc. And I didn't really mean to do that. I clicked something. But basically, let's do this. It does not like that when I do delete. But once you start selecting some of these things, if you had used more than one, you can continue to bibliography and it will just select the ones that you used. So again, this can be good for really lightweight things. Personally, not my favorite if I'm doing something longer, and that's where we're going to get into the write and cite functionality of RefWorks. And I'm going to open a Word document and show you how that can work to your benefit. So I'm actually going to just close this pop-up window for now. I'm going to open my Word document. And this Word document, at the top in this green text, I'm just highlighting how you can get what is called the Reference Citation Manager, the RCM add-on, into your Word document. And this is what we're going to be using to write while we cite. I'm going to move this Word document for a moment. The Reference Citation Manager is also available in RefWorks under the Tools again. And this is where we got our Bookmarklet. If you click Tools and Tools again, and it's thinking about it. Well, let me just close a few tabs while it's doing that. Actually, I could have gone to Tools that way. Oh, here we go. So we're on the Tools page. We already looked at the Bookmarklet, but if you scroll down, there's going to be a section that says Cite References in your word processor. And then it has this tabbed area of Microsoft Word, Google Docs, etc. And it mentions the RefWorks Citation Manager. This is for Word 2016 and above, and this is what I am going to be using. They do also mention something for older versions called Write and Cite, and then other Windows and Mac versions. I think, again, a lot of people are now on RCM because it is for Word 2016 and above. So it also has instructions for installing here, and this is essentially what I'm also including in this Word document. I've already inserted the RCM add-in into my Word. So for me, I have RCM up here at the top. I'm going to click on that. It brings up the RefWorks Citation Manager at the far upper left of my Word document. And I'm going to click on that. And then this is going to bring up a right-hand panel. So it's going to remind us a little bit of what we actually see in the RefWorks tool. When it brings up this panel for you the first time, you are also going to have to log into RefWorks because it needs to know, oh, you're working on this Word document and what citations actually belong to you, what RefWorks account belongs to you. And that's just loading a little bit, but this is a good time for me to also mention something else. I'm going to come back to RefWorks in the upper right where my name is, and I'm going to go to the settings information. So I mentioned at the very beginning, there can be reasons to set up your account just sort of regularly, or whether to set it up with the single sign-on. Now, because I'm using the single sign-on, for security reasons, when I connect the RCM in Word, it doesn't want me, or is not going to allow me to use my single sign-on password. And because of that, so I'm using my institutional credentials. Because of that, when I start using RCM Word, I actually have to have an alternate password there. So I do have a password. You can see there's an option for me to change my password. So that's an FYI. This is probably the one reason why you might just want to create a regular account and not a single sign-on account. In the same way, though, I'm using the single sign-on and I just am using the alternate password. So my alternate password is what allowed me to bring up the panel and to really connect to my account. So I'm actually already logged into my RefWorks account. I could log out here, which I'm not going to do for our purposes today. So I'm just going to show this hamburger menu again in a moment. In this document, I'm currently listed as using Chicago 15th edition. If you click on the hamburger menu in this panel, so this is at the upper left of the panel, you have an option with citation style to choose a different citation for writing this paper. So this tool will support, maybe you're doing a paper in one of your courses and this citation style is required, but in another paper you're using a completely different citation style. That's totally fine. You can choose which citation style you want per paper. So I can change this, and let me actually start with something like MLA 8th edition first for an example. So, and I'm actually gonna update that, which might do a couple kind of interesting things in my paper. So I'm gonna update that, and I'm actually just gonna get rid of a couple other things that I had in this sample so I can illustrate this a little more clearly. Okay, so now it shows in this top blue ribbon, MLA 8th edition. And I'm going to come over here to the end of the word strong, and I'm just going to pretend that I want to cite something here that I've either, paraphrased or quoted something. And I'm also going to go to my all references folder. I'm going to go down to the grapheme folder so I'm not looking at everything. And I'm going to select a reference, and I'm going to click Cite This. When I click Cite This, this happened kind of very quickly, but it put in an in-text citation because I'm using MLA style. I realize this page number looks a little strange, but I think it's just the nature of that journal and how they do their page numbers. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to come over here to Form, and I'm going to scroll down on the right, and I'm going to choose something else. Let me go edit this. If you do edit this, you can also do something such as put in a specific page number if that was something you were doing. And it's also telling me what the works cited piece would look like for this. And I'm going to insert a citation, so I should see something plopping in after form, which it does. Now I'm going to scroll down, because what has also been happening is because I'm using MLA, it calls it works cited. It also is putting in the works cited items for the article by Chen and by Jernigan, and it's doing it in alphabetical order. So if I put in something else and it's supposed to be between C and J, it would reorder those for me. So this is really potentially the time-saving nature of these tools and why they can be really useful. So that's just using MLA style. I do want to show, before we wrap up here, how another citation style might work. And I'm actually just going to start this by removing these citations in MLA. And I'm just going to get rid of this works cited for a minute. Okay, so I'm kind of back to where I was. So I'm going to go back from the MLA style and return to the Chicago 15th. And the reason I'm going to show the Chicago 15th style, I think I had 15. I'm going to do the notes and bibliography. This is an example of a style where we're going to have footnotes. And this operates a little bit differently in RefWorks than what you might expect or what you may have seen in some other tools. Now, this is a little bit strange that I'm using science articles with Chicago, but we'll just kind of suspend reality for a couple minutes here. So again, I'm going to think, okay, I want to enter a citation or a footnote. I need to reference a specific article at this point. So what I'm going to do with Chicago 15th edition is I actually have to go insert footnote, and I'm going to do the numbered footnotes. I'm going to say at the bottom of the page versus endnotes, and I'm going to go insert. So it's bringing me down here to where the footnote should go. Then I'm going to come over to the panel, click edit this, And it's thinking about it. I was just going to put in a page number. Okay. And I'm going to insert the citation. Okay, so what it's doing is it then put in the footnote for me. But I do have to take that step of selecting that I want a word footnote and then coming and selecting the citation. So it did that, and it's also starting to generate my bibliography. So this was the footnote part. This was the bibliography part. Now I can also come and try one more. So again, I have to remember to go to Insert, Footnote, and I'm just going to go Insert, bring that here, and let's just select something else. This time I'm just going to go cite this. I'm not going to go edit it. So that brought it in as number 2. And then it brought that into the bibliography, and it's in the bibliography part, it's doing it alphabetically, which is correct. So this is also nice with footnotes. You know, you can always come back and do, of course, an earlier footnote, and it's going to renumber those for you. So now the number 2 is there, and you can select something else. But that's just sort of an FYI if you're using footnote or endnote styles and using the RCM with RefWorks. But this is a nice functionality to have, and really, again, I think this is the main reason why we often use these tools, because you can see if you're writing a longer paper or a dissertation, that ultimately this is going to save you time, because none of us probably want to do all of this manually. But it does involve some, you know, managing your workflow and just making sure that you have your citations in there and have the data nice and clean. Just coming back to the hamburger menu, a couple things to note. You can actually turn the bibliography off. Some people don't want the bibliography sort of automatically updating all the time, or they think that takes a little bit too long, so you could turn that off. So I guess that's the main thing I wanted to mention there. There's also a contact support that you can get a hold of RefWorks if you have specific questions. And if we are back at our library guide about RefWorks, I also have a help section at the back, which has their phone number, it has their email, and their chat service. And they also have a YouTube channel, some quick start guides, etc. And the rest of this guide is going to just highlight some of the things that we went over today. We've done these different sections about account creation, adding references, organizing, editing, annotating, and then the real nugget of creating citations and bibliographies. So I hope that you found that helpful. If you do have questions, feel free to get in touch with me. My name is Sarah Davidson Squibb. My email is sdavidson2@ucmerced.edu. You can also email us at library@ucmerced.edu. We also have on our library webpage the Ask a Librarian under About Us. This also gives you options for getting in contact with us, including a 24/7 chat service or making an appointment as well with me or one of my colleagues. We can meet with you through Zoom, and this functionality allows a spot to be reserved on our calendars, and then we can meet with you on Zoom. So I hope that gives you a good sense of what RefWorks is all about and how you can use it. Thanks for joining me for this session, and please do be in touch if you have questions.